Hey guys, welcome back to the SBP Podcast Mobile Filmmaking. You're listening to episode 163, and I'm your host, Susie Botello. Zacuto is one of the sponsors for the International Mobile Film Festival in 2024. Mark the dates, April 26th through the 28th. Oh, and by the way, come and meet them in person. Come and put your hands on what they've got to offer. We're going to talk about the Smart Z Finder, which is one of their newer devices for smartphone mobile filmmakers. And one of the designers, Steve Weiss, is with us today. Now, I do have to warn you that the audio in this episode, Steve's microphone comes in really hot, but it's really hard to re-record something like this, especially for our guest. So be as it may, I apologize, but I hope that you'll be able to listen to it and listen to what Steve has to say. So let's go and let's talk to Steve now. Steve, I am honored to have you on our podcast so we can share your story with everyone. So welcome to the SBP podcast and the as a sponsor as well to the International Mobile Film Festival here in San Diego. How are you?
Good. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, no, I got to tell you, this is going to be a very inspiring episode, and so don't mind me making a big deal out of your story because it's amazing, incredible, and awesome, and very, very, very exciting to hear what you have to say before you even said it. So I want to make the announcement a little more officially now with our listeners here. That you are sponsoring the International Mobile Film Festival with Zacuto because one of the reasons being that you've created this wonderful viewfinder. And I want you to talk just a little bit about that before we talk about the background story that you have.
Okay. Well, I mean, since they came out with digital cameras, there hasn't been one digital camera that I've actually there was one, but for the most part, there hasn't been a single digital camera that's usable as a documentarian type of use. I started off doing everything from weddings in the late 70s all the way to documentaries, fashion industry, fashion films, point of purchase, all this stuff. But we had cameras that you could throw on your shoulder and you could do handheld work. That's pretty much my whole life has been handheld. And, now you get these things that are boxes, they're unusable. So around, 2005, when they came out with these new form of digital cameras that weren't E and G shaped, we were like, God, we have to make some equipment. We just can't. So we made the original Zacuto equipment for ourselves. We had no way of putting, an HVX 200 on our shoulder. People don't realize you're not supposed to hold a camera at your chest. You're supposed to get it up high on your shoulder so that people look flattering. You're not shooting up at them. So every iteration of these new technologies, the mirrorless, not the mirrorless, the DSL, the Mark, the 5D. When the 5D came out, we went to NAB and we had all these interesting rigs for holding these, put them on your shoulder, and everybody sort of laughed at us. And we had the first viewfinder that we ever made. And I'll never forget it. We got an early 5D from Canon because I knew people there. And I looked at the thing and I was like, oh my God, this is going to be great. We're going to have an optical viewfinder. It's going to be like shooting film again. And we turned the thing on and we're like, oh, wow, the video only shows on the screen. You can't see it through the viewfinder. So I was like, okay, hold on. It immediately hit me I was with my business partner Jens, and I ran to my Hasselblad camera bag, and there was a viewfinder that fit exactly on that 5D, and that I said, we got to make this thing, and he's like, what, a loop? It's essentially a loop. I said, yeah, we got to make it, but that Hasselblad one worked perfectly. And ever since then, all these, young people are not very accustomed to looking into a viewfinder. But
Oh, I know. It's a completely it's a different thing. But it's the best way to see exactly what you want to see, what you're filming.
Yeah. I mean, old timers like us, we only know how to look at, because, and this is why, and I was looking at some footage today that somebody shot for us, and I was like talking to somebody who wasn't very knowledgeable, but I was like, it's horrible. I'm like, we're coming out with all of this equipment and making, these things available to people, but still we have to focus on storytelling. We have to focus on composition. We have to focus on screen direction, on performance. But number one, if I cannot see what is in that screen, if you take a phone outside or any camera that you're looking at a screen, you can't see if there's a little bottle of water sitting in the corner there, and that would flip me out. I mean, I need to see the lines. If the sidewalk is curved, I'm going to want to use that screen direction. If you're holding a gimbal, I mean, I'm not knocking gimbals. Gimbals, I use them.
I'm really not a big fan of gimbals myself.
Well, the thing is, if I'm doing a dolly shot, I'm going to use a dolly. A dolly is a way that you can peer in on a scene by moving around it. A gimbal is a device for moving through a scene so you can peer in on it. A steady cam is a different aesthetic than a gimbal. People seem to think they're the same. They're slightly different. A crane allows you to move through space and come down and peer into the scene. Each one of these devices is, a tripod is, each one of these is a totally different experience. And if you watch, movies like a Hitchcock film or, any movie between 1962 and 1972, you are going to see people use these devices, and they're used in a way to accentuate storytelling. Now that we're using a phone, those rules don't go out the window. Right. It's just another recording device. It's incredible. Okay. I mean, if I were a kid and I had one of these things, I'd be out of my mind. I had to buy film and process it, So when people tell me, oh, I want to get into filmmaking, what camera should I use? I'm like, you got a phone, use that. They're like, well, it's not professional. I'm like, it's 50 times better than what I had my entire career.
What I think the simplicity of the phone too does is it helps you, it's supposed to anyways, help you concentrate on the things that you were talking about, the storytelling, the composing, and all those things. And with what you've got, you're able to really focus in on the composing, which is the cinematography part of, the look and the feel, the
and
aesthetics.
And the direction.
Yes, exactly. And so those things are very important because they are all part of the story. A lot of times, when we're filming stuff with our phones, a lot of times most people just focus. I mean, I call the phone in a way a window, to tell a story with, because everything that you see is what you're going to get. And it's right there. It's the entire frame is the screen, especially if you're holding it horizontally. It's the same size, not the same size, but you know what I mean, the same shape of a screen like on television or at a movie theater or something like that. So what you see, like in the older cameras, you have that safe, the safe space for television where you don't have to worry about that with the things that we have today.
Well, I'll disagree with one part of that, and it's almost worse because now I'm told I have to go out and, I mean, I had a young kid tell me that he shoots in 8K so that he can frame this both horizontally and vertically. And I said, don't ever say that to me ever again. I said, you don't want to do that. If you're shooting vertically, you need to compose the scene vertically. If you're shooting horizontally, you have to compose the scene horizontally. You cannot do both of those at the same time, or you are a bad filmmaker. Because
was he talking about cropping it later or something? What was he
yeah,
talking
but
about?
still, that is horrible approach to filmmaking, because when I look at a horizontal, see my background, we didn't really get into this, but I'm a filmmaker my whole life. This equipment thing is new and sort of on top of my filmmaking. But the point is that when I look at a horizontal screen, I'm studying every portion of that. I'm figuring out which negative space, which positive space I want. I'm looking at the lines that we're creating. Every photo, every shot has these sort of visible lines, the arcs of where the images are. People talk about this rule of thirds. That is what creates these lovely lines that you can't like just go and wildly shoot something and then super wide and then hope to pull a vertical and hope to pull a gorgeous horizontal out of there. I mean, you can do it, but I would never do that. If I'm shooting vertically, I am going to frame. I mean, it's new to me, but I am going to use whatever canvas you give me, and I'm going to. That'd be like saying I'm going to take a painting that's on my wall and carve a vertical and a horizontal out of it. Can you do that?
Yeah, no, I totally get you on that. And the other thing that's really cool about filming with a phone is I like, now when you're using the viewfinder, right?
Yeah.
It's a game changer, but one of the things that because I don't have a viewfinder for mine, but what I do is I'm constantly looking at the scene around me. I'm not moving my camera to view what's around me while I'm filming. I'm used to filming events a lot, and I would look at the entire event and frame it. And if I see somebody coming to the right, I know that person is going to come to the right and move towards the left, and I'm ready for it, and that's my plan. But you're constantly thinking as you're filming, where if you're using a viewfinder, how do you do that, Steve?
Okay. Well, what you're talking about is what we call a one-take environment. So, and that is a great environment. Like, if people want to really become filmmakers, you shoot weddings. Yeah. I have seen nowadays people do amazing weddings. They're like movies, because when you work in a one-take environment, that's like being in war. You have no option of getting this is it. It's like live, you got
there's
one
no
shot.
Retakes.
There's no retakes. And if you don't get it, you're going to get berated so bad. It's not even fun. Do 100 weddings and then become a filmmaker. That's or be an event shooter like you're talking about. It's a one take environment. Yeah. So if somebody is, you have your other eye. So typically what I'm going to do is I'm going to like scope it out like you're doing. And I see somebody start to walk, and then I put my eye in the viewfinder, and I sometimes use my other eye. People have attempted to make something like our Smart Finder where you stick both your eyes in there. And we kind of laughed at that, going, okay, you could walk into a hole,
So it's I get you. Now you're using it more like you use a DSLR camera, through the viewfinder, where it's only one eye.
Oh yeah, our thing is basically what we've done is so here's what I did. I looked at the phone and I said, how would I want to use this? So many cameras I want to get up on my shoulder, because I'm, for all day shooting and stuff like that. But the phone, when I really looked at it aesthetically, and I said, okay, I see this like my Super 8 movie camera, where my hand is in a pistol grip and I'm holding the phone directly to my eye, and I have my other hand to work controls, focus, things like that. It's
run a boom.
Well, we have a boom that actually goes on the top, but the point being that when you play with one of our smart Z finders, it will feel exactly like you don't notice. Like if I were to blink and then look into my Super 8 camera, I would. The only difference is the iPhone. The picture's so great, and it's large. I actually would like it a little smaller. I mean, I might have said iPhone. I mean all phones. But
Right.
uh, we there is one thing that I'm not crazy about, but other people sort of like this. When you look in there, it's like this, like you're in a movie theater,
Oh,
in the 10th row. It's just it's immersive experience. Personally, I actually like very tiny little viewfinders where I don't have to. You got to be very careful for having too much eye movement. But this is the nature of filmmaking today. We are using bigger devices and bigger screens, and it's just the way it is. Um, but the experience is exactly what your viewer will get because you've eliminated every single reflection and you're looking at it with a magnifier. So it's like sitting and watching your TV at home, and you put some headphones on, and it is amazing. It's like I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to experience exactly what the viewer is going to experience with no glare, no
yeah.
reflections.
I've shared in this podcast with some of my viewers before my experience when I was a little kid. My father was a photographer as well, out of all the things that he did, and I watched him a lot, as a photographer. And I would notice that he would climb up on something to get a different angle. And one of the things that I realized was that photography was about perspective, right? And so and I loved movies. So when I got my first camera, I was 7 years old, and 6 or 7. And I walked around with looking through the viewfinder, pretending I was watching a movie. And that was, when you just talked about that, that's exactly what I was picturing. That feeling, because the world that you're creating sort of blocks out the real world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need to see. And then you can really study your screen. I mean, like when I look at a screen, so if we're shooting a scene, whatever it is, whether it's narrative or a documentary scene or whatever it is, because I've shot every kind of thing known to man, I look at it like a child and I say, okay, what do I have here? What do I want where? What type of blocking do I want? What do I want to see? Just like what you said earlier, I want to follow this person move here. It doesn't really matter what they're doing, or what it is you're filming, but you have to look at it with these like childlike eyes and go, okay. Now, if I can't see it, then it's game over. If I'm outside and it's 3 feet in front of me on a stick, I don't know what to do. I need to, I gotta say, first off, I can't be, when you're holding it in your eye, it's like part of your body. That's a whole nother thing that we haven't really even talked about, but it's this points of contact. So when you hold your hand on the handle and you're pushing it towards your eye, it becomes part of your body and it moves with you. And that's what handheld cinematography is all about. It's whether it's on your shoulder, it becomes part of you, and you're.
That's why I don't like the gimbals myself.
Well, yeah, that it's a different thing. What's
It's like
happening.
being on a boat for one thing.
Yes, exactly.
And you lose control of, and now you're focusing more on controlling this apparatus, right? Instead of just flowing with your vision.
Well, yeah. If I were using a Steadicam or a gimbal, I mean, I would have an operator, and I would be sitting and looking at the monitor, so I'm connected to the earth, as you say. So
Yeah.
I'm in the video village or wherever, or wherever I'm holding a monitor, and now that's the thing that's part of my body. You have to be connected to the image. You can't. you really, the guy that's doing the camera operation, he needs to focus on getting the shot. The cinematographer's job is to interpret the director's vision.
Exactly.
But if you are the director slash shooter slash, predator, we'll call him cinematographer, producer, director, editor,
I like that.
then it becomes difficult when you have a floating object. And I'm really trying to focus in on what's happening on the screen, the performance, the screen direction, like you said, where somebody's walking from A to B, blocking, things like that. Those types of devices are difficult to be the camera operator and the director. But you just have to, I'm going to send one of these out to you so you can experience what I'm talking about. But when you turn it into this sort of Super 8 form, which was such a great form, I made this poster that showed like all of these cameras between 1935 and now, and they all had this kind of pistol grip that I was accustomed to. And it just, the moment I had the first prototype of this, I was like, that's it. I feel it. It's like I'm 13 again, and I'm holding my Super 8 camera. There's just something, there's just something incredible about it.
It's got to be comfortable to hold.
It's that, and it's the experience of seeing what the viewer sees. And I don't know how to put it into words, actually.
That's the thing. So you're talking about, so because of your background in more conventional, traditional filmmaking, right? I mean, I've worked on sets with like 150 people, crew, and that was still a small production, right? And you have everybody is playing a different part. You have all these people in the more current indie, small indie micro filmmaking, micro budget, right? Then that starts to narrow down into, well, we've only got a crew of 5, or 10.
That's a ton.
Yeah, but now with mobile filmmaking and basically gunning it, the cinematographer is the director, more than one director. They're the storyteller and the cinematographer. So on one side, right, on the flip side, it's like, oh, I have the control as a director where I don't have to have somebody else try and perform my vision, and I can work the phone. I can work this. This is simpler for me to do. But at the same time, you have to be, this is why, again, the gimbal to me is I was really excited when I got one. And then I was like, oh my God, no, because I like to know what I'm doing while I'm doing it. And I'm kind of meticulous for, shooting stuff. Like, I've been in video production and things like that. And it's like, it's very simple. Once you know what to plug in here and what to plug in there, your white balancing and all this stuff, you're done. Everything else is just your creativity. And that's the part about mobile filmmaking, which is game-changing, Steve, is the fact that, yes, you can have a crew of 2 or 3 people at the most, but you can direct and be the storyteller at the same time that you're behind the camera, controlling, as a cinematographer, your perspective and your vision.
Yeah, I mean, in my career, I've probably never really had more than 10 people on a crew, and most of the time it's 2 or 3. I did weddings on 3/4 inch, just had a separate recorder, a cart, 10 pieces. I was running around like a crazy person, hundreds of pounds worth of equipment. Now this is infinitely better, but it doesn't really, I'm assuming that everybody is the director and the cinematographer in one. That's not an uncommon thing in documentary style or one take environment shooting, nor has it been from the beginning of time. It's always been a 1 to 3 man type operation. Sound used to be different. But now there are ways to do sound and picture all at once. Although the sound is a whole nother story that we're going to talk about probably, but it's infinitely more important than the visual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talk about that in this podcast a lot. As a matter of fact, it's a separate animal, and for filmmaking, now for video production, it's different, but for filmmaking, for making narrative films themselves, I actually recommend that people record that externally.
Oh, I don't have a problem with recording it on the phone. I mean, first off, sound is, bad video is a creative choice. You could say that's my look. Bad sound is intolerable and is unusable. Yeah. So, and I have, in the film I did, Light and Shadow, I asked, 35 of the top cinematographers of all time, if you could have good sound or good picture, which would you have? And half of them said good sound, and their job was to be a cinematographer.
Yeah.
So sound is absolutely critical, and I have no problem recording it on the phone. We have this new boom, on-camera boom that stretches out almost 4 feet off the camera, where you can interview people, just walk right up and interview them. And, that way you don't have to mic them up and change their performance to, the pre-prepared
That's
statement.
how I do it, because I'm not making actual narrative films, though,
Same. To me, there's no difference. Like, I'm focused, step one, I arrive, I figure out how I'm going to do my sound. Step two, I figure out what the action is going to be. Step three, I kind of rehearse it if it's not a one-take environment. If it's a documentary or something, but documentaries are one-take environments. Person says that if you miss it,
completely. I love, that's my favorite genre right there, is documentaries.
You miss it, the moment's gone. You're never getting it back.
Yep.
So it doesn't really matter. I had a talk with my daughter, actually. I think it was last night. We've been saying this for years. All art is the same. All art forms are the same. She's a painter. Now she's in fashion design. They start with composition. They move to production and creation. Doesn't matter if you're making a photograph. My father was a photographer too. So was I a photographer. I still am. You start. You have a concept. You design something. You figure out what the composition. I call it screen direction. It's a little different in a painting. It's a little different in a photo. It's a little different in a garment. On screen, it doesn't really matter if it's a sculpture. All art is the same, and it starts exactly the same way. And then you pick up your tools and you go.
It's perspective in a way, right?
It's, now comes the juicy part. The juicy part that people need to know is, how do I approach this project? We have these incredible tools now, but I'm seeing a lot of work that's not as good as I wish it would be, because I'm concerned that people aren't doing the learning process, and it's not to say that you can learn all of this. We kind of go through a lot of this in our film, Light and Shadow, but really what you got to do now is watch movies and watch the cuts and see why they happen and when they happen, and look at screen direction. I mean, all you got to do is watch movies. You can see what the great people have done, how they frame it, why they frame it, how their blocking is being done. All of this you don't even need to take a single class. Just watch a ton of movies. Every time I watch a movie, because lately I've been doing a lot of writing, I look at the movie and I'm like, okay, what was the point? How did they go about telling it? What were the incredible moments? Why did these characters say what they say? That's what we need to focus on. We need to focus on storytelling. We need to focus on lighting if you want beautiful cinematography. And we need to focus on incredible sound. And I don't care if you're using a phone, if you're drawing a picture of it, or if you're painting it. It's the same, or you're writing it. It's funny now that I'm doing more writing, it just feels like I'm editing the project. It literally feels like I'm editing it on paper. So
well, you are, because you're
yeah,
writing screenplays, right?
yeah. So it's but that's what I would say to young people is why I'm not huge into the school thing, but it does work for many people. So school, great. No school, watch movies. That's it. The movie is a perfect example. You've seen hundreds of them of exactly what you're trying to create.
I've taught mobile filmmaking, and the funny thing about mobile filmmaking is, like, a dentist wants to know, how to do it. People who've never touched a microphone in their life, or a camera beyond, their phone, will want to learn about it. People of all ages, up to people in their 70s and 80s. And the funny thing is that I tell them always is, you don't know what you know because you're not focused on it. But you've been watching movies your entire life, and you're feeling things. So once you start recording, pay attention to it, like in the same way that you want to see it later, with a phone. What you're watching is what you want to, what you're capturing is what you want. And then later, go put it onto iMovie or whatever. It can be anything really simple. And once you start using those transitions and things like that, you'll feel those things, and you'll realize what they're supposed to be used for and why they do that. Why did the video go all black more than what they normally do, in between a scene? Well, time is changing, or if it goes into white, oh, somebody's having a flashback, or, things like that. And you don't need to go to school to know that. You just have to watch a lot of movies, like you said.
Well, it's one way. I mean, there's many ways. Some people are natural storytellers. There's not that many stories to tell. We have like 7 story models,
Right.
and so you can work within that. Like I always work within this, what we used to call the hero's journey, but now I think they call it voyage and return. But I like that story model. It's what the stories I want to write. Um, I'm not really into writing a tragedy or something like that. But it's weird. I've never looked at movies like I did since COVID, where I was really watching movie after movie after movie and really going, wow, it's a very simple plot, this movie. And yet they moved us through a series of incredible emotions to get to that plot. Now, why and how did they do that? And the incredible thing is, start watching movies from the late 30s and early 40s where they figured out how to do this type of storytelling. And it's astounding at how good some of those movies are, and how we haven't really improved upon that process at all.
Yeah, I cry at the movies that you would want me to watch, like the ones that you're talking about. I like to watch a lot of movies by myself because I cry. I feel the emotions in them.
Well, that's good. Then they've accomplished their mission.
Yes, they have.
My wife used to be my editor for almost 20 years, and we were always like, man, if we don't get tears, like when I'm interviewing somebody, I go for tears, man. My Jens, my cinematographer, because we again, 20 years ago, you couldn't be a one-man band, and you really can't when you're interviewing somebody. So we would interview people all the time, and that's the basis of a lot of what we did. And he can tell when I'm starting to question somebody and I'm going for tears. And I have like a little hand signal I do, which means move into the eyes, because
Yes.
we're going for tears right now. If you don't get tears, what's the whole point?
Yeah. I could talk to you for days about this, and maybe in throughout our partnership, we can do that. Maybe you can come back. Would you be willing to come back to the
Sure.
podcast?
Sure.
Okay, because then we could talk deeper about each one of these things that you were pointing out, because we do this with different guests, but your perspective, it's incredible. Steve, you're awesome.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I want to talk about something else real quick here. Well, not real quick. I want to talk about Zacuto, your company.
Mm-hmm.
Share with our listeners where it comes from and how it was formed, because that's very fascinating.
Well, my family line is this Zacuto line, which stretches back into Spain there, and so I went with that name partially because if you type in Zacuto, I own the internet on the word Zacuto. So but there are other Zacutos in the film industry. There was a Zacuto Audio, and there's some Zacutos in LA that work in the film industry too. So I came up with this name Zacuto in 1999, and prior to that, I had a production company, and but we sold our production company, and we kind of had nothing to do, so we were like, hey, let's start a rental company. And these HD cameras had just come out in 2000, So we had 3 of these Varicams. There were only about 100 in the country, and we were renting them to political. In Chicago, we have a lot of these, this Axelrod and Edelstein. So they were doing like stuff for Barack Obama and other candidates using, because it was the first time you could like get a 24p image that looked filmish out of a video camera. And we were renting them to Major League Baseball and stuff like that. And it was easy business. We just, rented them, these 3 cameras, and it was profitable. And then all of a sudden they came out with this HVX 200, and we were like, whoa, we got 100,000 in each one of these cameras. And now you made one for 6 that kind of almost obsoletes these things. So then we were like, okay, how can we rent these things? And then we, made a base plate, and we got it on our shoulder because it was like a palm camera, which is like, what are you going to do with that? So then they came out with the 5D, and that's when things got interesting. When you could have shallow depth of field, and we started, like I said, the original equipment we made for ourselves and our rental department. And then people started asking us really quickly, oh, can I buy this? Can I buy that? Can I buy this? And we were like, well, we're a rental house, So then we...
And these were things that you were creating
for
yourself.
Ourselves.
It wasn't like...
Yeah. So,
exactly.
So then I met with Pete Abel and Rich over there, and they were like, why can't we be your dealer for these products? And we were like, all right, we'll do it. So they were our original dealer, and then we started selling them all around the world when this sort of 5D thing happened. And our Z finders, we've made these Z finders for every single camera since, and essentially the Smart Z Finder is a Z Finder. It's basically a loop. It's like when we would look at slides on a light box, we would use a loop to see the slide close up. Your dad, I'm sure, shot slides and you looked at them. Or if you ever had a Viewmaster,
I think I remember a little box type of a thing where he would stick it, and it would have a button that would light with a battery and a light bulb in it or something like that. That had a loop in it,
and those were nicer. I liked those. Those were cool. I mean, like a Viewmaster. Do you remember those things? You put the little round disc in, and they had like, you'd go click. That essentially is a loop looking at a chrome or a slide, whatever, and which was positive film. So like in the film days, you'd shoot negative, and then they would make a positive, and the positive is what you would watch in the movie theater. It was a projected slide, 24 a second, excuse me. So then the whole thing just kind of blew up, and we started designing all different kinds of products, things that we always dreamed that we could have, when we were filming, types of articulating arms, and it was fun. It was like, but we had a sort of a philosophy that we would never make anything if we couldn't make it new with massive improvements, or that it was a new concept. Like this smart finder for a phone is a new concept. We got to change some hearts and minds here. We got people that think we're nuts. And that, right.
I'm used to that.
So we got our job ahead of us here. And I knew it. I told Mandy, the moment we make this thing, people are going to flame us. They're going to say it's stupid. And our job is going to have to be to change hearts and minds, because people either hold the phone, they use a gimbal, they put it on a tripod, but they're not accustomed to looking through a viewfinder. And we need to show them that this is a way of shooting that is, and once you experience it, you're going to go, wow, this is pretty cool.
I think it's just about that. It's mobile filmmakers are constantly experimenting with different things, and so I don't think it's going to be that tough to change it. If it works and they like it, they will use it.
Well, I think that I don't know if I like the word mobile filmmaker. Because
they really are indie filmmakers.
They're just filmmakers.
Storytellers.
I always used to say to people, they're like, oh, well, I have to buy this camera. I have to buy this camera. I got to buy this camera. I'm like, look, we always rented equipment. We got the right camera for the right job. The phone isn't perfect for everything. It is an amazing camera for a lot of things. It's not for everything.
Yeah.
No tool is for everything. There's the right tool for the right job. But this tool is an amazing tool for a ton of jobs. It's just that, I don't know, to me, I would call it a camera. It's another kind of camera, but I really like this camera. I just hate saying it's a phone or something, because it has a stigma to certain people that it's not, that they can't get an image, or it's not professional. Because I saw somebody use an iPhone 4, and I wish I could remember this guy's name. He made narrative films in 2000 with an iPhone 4.
Are you talking about Conrad Mess?
He's the one that did that thing with the bullet where he slowed it down.
I
can't believe you.
That's one of my best friends in the industry.
I used to.
The very first film I got, Steve.
Right?
Yes, The Fixer. The very first film that I got at the film festival, after waiting a year after launching it, actually almost 2 years, because it was in 2011, not in 2010. He made it with his wife's iPhone 4. He made that film, The Fixer. And that was actually the one that you see. That was actually his second attempt, because the first one, the actor had to go and get a real job, he said. And so he left him halfway through it. Conrad Mess is meticulous about it. And what he did was he took the footage from the iPhone 4 and he brought it into Adobe After Effects and treated it. And the audio that he used was audio. He hired somebody from online to dub the lines from the screenplay. Somebody from online that he hired, and he put that in. That movie, when I got that movie, it was like a dream come true for me. It was like verification, my vision of the future where you're making these for the cinema, you just proved it. And he's from Zaragoza in Spain. And
when was that movie made?
That was made in 2011.
And I remember that now, and I'm 61. Okay. And he's written to me. We've written back and forth many times. I've offered to send him equipment and things, and I don't know if it's I don't know if it's Conrad or someone in Italy. There's a guy in Italy that's also doing amazing work, And there's a lot of people, that are doing incredible work with, mirrorless cameras and phones. But when I saw what he did there, and I remembered it, I'm the one that brought it up,
Yep.
that I was blown away, like you said. I was like, wow, he took a tool, like I talked about, and he made
Yep.
a movie. You wouldn't have known that was on a phone. And like you said, the sound was, I mean, his sound design was incredible. It was like a Quentin Tarantino film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's his
And,
style.
but it's the sound that blew you away, that made
Yeah.
you think that, oh, whoa, this is real. The image. Now,
Yeah.
the other example I'm going to give is this movie called The Celebration. And I've talked about this movie for 20 years. It was a Dogma movie. I think it's Lars von Trier, and he shot it with a DV cam, like that little flip out one,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
the
I've
one
worked
that
with those,
stood
yeah.
tall. It was kind of tall, and the little screen flipped out. But he had $1 million
Yeah.
budget 20 years ago, or more than 20 years ago. He put all the money into actors. I mean, they didn't use tripods. They made everything. This whole Dogma thing was difficult. But the point being that the picture quality, not great. Sound, they did good sound. But the acting and the story, after 5 seconds, the story just pulls you in, and it was like you completely forgot that he shot this thing on a DV cam, you know, in 4:3 aspect ratio, with nothing even remotely like what we have now, even in an iPhone 4. And it is an incredible movie, and it's incredible because of the storytelling. And that's exactly what Conrad did. He told an amazing story that really I remember every single scene. That he slows a bullet down, and he has,
He
yeah,
does rack
cameras.
focus on After Effects. Yeah, that was. I mean, Filmic Pro didn't
I know.
exist when he
I
made
saw it.
that film.
There's another guy here in Chicago that made a. Philip Bloom and I were somewhere. I don't know where we were. We were like at an event, and he brings this iPad, and he's like, "Here, watch this." And I take a look at it, and I say, "Here, Bloom, you got to look at this." I don't know if you know who he is. He's big in the
Yeah.
uh, in the film industry,
Oh, yeah.
and in
Yeah.
this segment of the industry. And he looks at it, and we had a show together called Critics for many years, where we would review people's uh, internet content. And this guy made like a Nazi World War II movie in his basement, and it was incredible. It
Wow.
was like you were watching Schindler's List. And we were like, how did you do this? He's
Wow.
like, well, I went to Auschwitz, and I shot a high res photo here and a high res photo here. And I motion tracked it with people in my backyard doing jumping jacks in the concentration camp. And it had this, he had like a Nagra, and you saw the meters. It was just so amazing. And again, it didn't matter what tool he used. It was just the moment you get sucked in, you don't even care. The final. So this movie that I was talking about that we made called Light and Shadow, which is where we interviewed all these cinematographers and just got to ask them not really questions about cinematography. We really talked about the what is creativity, and how do we manifest it, and what is talent, and how do you get it, and things like that. And um, what was interesting is the last line in the whole movie. The guy says, you know, he goes, if you've got a good story and you know what you're doing, he goes, it doesn't really matter what camera you use. He goes, you can show this movie, and nobody in Hollywood is even going to ask you. They're just going to look at it, and they're going to say it's wonderful, or it's not. Hopefully they're going to say it's wonderful, like what Conrad does. I could. He's the kind of guy that I'm inspired by, because you could give him anything. I can't even imagine what he's doing with an iPhone 15.
Well, I'll have to get back in touch with him. It's very hard to get him back into the mobile filmmaking thing because he's
Oh,
made
okay.
so
I didn't
many
know that.
films.
Oh, yeah, that's so funny because there was a this guy in Italy I was saying he also was stuck on using I think also using a phone, but this was when an iPhone 4, and he was shooting World War II type movies also, and but all Italian World War II. And I said to him, "Let me send you some other equipment, and you can experiment with it." He's like, "No, no." And I kind of remember that Conrad telling me he didn't want to do something without a phone way back then.
Yeah. No, I mean that was as a matter of fact,
Have him email
I'm
me.
gonna look if you go to mobilefilmstories.com, there's a page with all his films
Hmm.
on there right now that you can watch, and one of them was a big hit. We used to screen it in our film festival when we actually had more time and less films. Um, and that film was shot all on green
Hmm.
screen, and it's incredible. It's an incredible film.
I'm pretty positive I reviewed that fixer on our critics show. I mean, we had probably 39 episodes or something, and we would review four or five uh, internet-based content projects without people's. We would just pick the ones that we wanted to, and we would, go at them. Me and Phil with our, we each have different opinions, and it was kind of an interesting show.
Right.
And but anyways, I'm gonna have to look back and see if I actually reviewed that fixer.
You'll have to know something else too. I'm just gonna tell you when he first sent that movie to me. It was I told him I made him a partner at the Mobile Film School here in San Diego because I launched it. I announced it at the very first film festival that we had. But what I did is I said to him, "I'm sorry, it's 7.5. Look, this was the hardest thing for me to do. I'm sorry that it's 7.5 minutes, but our first cutoff it was 1 to 3 minutes." And I was like just waiting for him to kick me and say, "Are you kidding me?" But I could tell that he could cut it up and tighten it up and stuff like that. So he made a 3 minute version for a film festival. And he emails me back within days. And he says, "I wasn't sure that that was going to be possible. But you know what? It still works. The story still works." And that's what we screened. But I used his film. I literally would walk around like a peddler on the street and say, "You can make a movie with your phone. Look at
I used
this.
to do the
Watch
same thing.
this."
I used to tell because I've always been saying. I told you this before we even talked about that. To me, a camera is a tool. A gimbal is a tool. A dolly is a tool. These are all just tools, like paintbrushes that we use to tell stories. And he found a new tool. And so you're like a kid running around going, look at what this guy did with this. There were people doing incredible work with 5Ds when they first came out. And I was like, man, you made an actual movie that could be played in a movie theater with a couple $1,000 camera. And kudos to you, man. I mean, you found a new paintbrush. And I think that's great.
Yeah. Well, and I was the one creating the canvas for everybody to come and put all their stuff together into a real film festival per se. When I say real, I know that that doesn't sound right, but basically a traditional film festival, even though it's also not so
I say
traditional
great.
in many
I
ways.
look. If there's something new, I'm using it. That's my thing. I just I'm not going to knock any kind of new technology, and especially the fact that I mean, everybody says the best camera you can have is the one that you have with you, but that it
Yeah.
sounds kind of silly, but when we were when well I'm not gonna say when we were kids. When I was a kid, the best camera I had was my travel camera that I wore around my neck, which was a Voigtlander. It was fairly small. We called them travel cameras. Now they call them street photography cameras or something like that.
Oh,
But they were great, and not every kid had a camera. It was only 1 in 30 or 50 or 100 kids even had access to a camera, a photo camera,
yeah.
even. So,
Hey, my friends didn't have access to them because they didn't have a photographer dad, and that's where my whole I begged him for having my own camera. He wouldn't even let
I
me
know it.
touch
I
his.
know it.
It was
I
a
know what you had.
professional
You had
camera.
either a Rolly or a Hasselblad because you
I
said he
don't
stepped on a
know.
ladder, and those cameras you had to look
Yeah.
down in them, so they ended up being by your waist.
Well, he used to do that so he would get the high angle, shots. He would also lay down on the ground. I remember him walking into the cathedrals and the churches in Spain, and he was very quote unquote religiously disrespected because he would just walk over to the altar to get a photo of somebody getting married or something like that. Um, and a lot of people didn't
But
like
that's
that,
what you're supposed to do.
but he didn't care.
If you just put this thing at eye level, he's using these various angles to create emotion or make a point. I mean, in Citizen Kane, the scenes are typically the cameras are very low, so low that at one point when they were shooting,
He dug a hole.
exactly
Yep.
because at Paramount,
That's so awesome.
so that he could get that hero. He always wanted Kane to be the hero. So
Yeah.
you do a hero shot. Now he could have put him up on a flat, a riser instead of digging a hole, but that's him.
It's a better
But
story, though.
yeah, it's a better story. But yeah, exactly. You should be looking at the scene and go, okay, where do I need to capture this so that it's going to be it's going to really accentuate the story. That's
Yeah.
the killer part of it. And the phone, oh my God. And I hate saying phone. I
Jesus.
need to come up with a new word
Listen,
besides phone.
this is why I pointed out. You and I are kind of not in the same business per se, but the reason I pointed out is because everybody has one. Where not everybody has a camera, and to be real, it still is a phone.
But it's a camera.
It's a camera. It's a phone that has a camera. It's a camera that has a phone. However you want to frame it.
Well, I have one that I use for filming.
Yeah.
And then I have a phone.
Oh, okay. Well, see, most people can't do that unless this is their game, and I'm trying to convince people to go and play this game because I want everybody and their brother to make movies because I believe everybody is a storyteller. They just don't know what their story is yet or that they can produce it.
Yeah, I would say that's a good way to look at it. But yeah, I like this little teeny phone. Like I have the iPhone 13 Pro. I know iPhone 13 Mini because I
Oh,
don't want to carry this giant thing around in my pocket. But if I'm going to be doing pictures and actually doing real filming with the phone, I like that iPhone 13 Pro. Although I might get this new one.
I hope you do. I'm jealous of anybody who gets it, but in a good way.
Well,
I
my
want
business
everybody
partner
to get
just
it.
got it. He got it today, I think, or yesterday.
Oh, that's awesome.
But I don't like these giant phones. I mean, to me, the Pro is already a little bigger than I wish that. I know this sounds weird, but for viewfinding, it's the smaller the phone, the better.
Right.
It's because otherwise you're going to have a little more eye fatigue looking around, but still the experience is worth it. If you can look into one of these viewfinders, it'll change the way you see scenes. You're gonna go, oh my God, this is how it must have been way back when, and it is
I
exactly
still have
how
a
it was.
4S and I have a 6S that I like to use for filming because my 13, which is what I have, it's got over 8,000 photos in it and videos, and so it's a little loaded. and I never have time to sift through to figure out what I want to get out of my phone anymore. It's crazy.
Well, now they have these hard drives and that you can attach to your phone.
Yeah, that's another
Although
reason why I would love to get the 15, but
I
we'll
have
see.
32,000 photos in my phone,
Gosh.
and that's I have probably 100,000 negatives that I don't even have digitized.
Well,
Yeah, I
that's
mean, I
interesting.
have everything from 1971 to when did we start taking digital photography? 2000 something or other.
Wasn't it in the late 90s or something like that?
Yeah, but I mean, it wasn't really high quality then. But then again,
Yeah.
I was doing it.
Yeah.
I was doing it because it was new and dumb, and I want it. You know, so I was doing it, and I was actually impressed by it. The only thing I I still this is going to sound crazy, but my daughter and I still shoot film photography,
I
and
have
we
an
have a dark room.
SLR. It's an in thing right now.
We have a dark room
Oh, nice.
at Zacuto, and
Raw.
we shoot and we print because there's just film is still film.
Yeah.
There's nothing that the grain structure, the texture of it, digital imagery is a little harsh on the skin. Film just fills it in with this beautiful texture that, you know, it's just wonderful. There's something great about it. But I mean, we use both. We use the phone. But we like taking film pictures when we go on trips.
Nice. Yeah, when I was at Comic-Con a couple years ago, and they were, or last year I think actually, and they said these guys were out there and they were, using all these film cameras, for photography, and they said that, and I said, really, I have an SLR. It's still film. It was digital, but it has film. It uses film, and they said, oh. Well, you need to break that out. It's an in thing. We have a club.
Oh, every hipster in the world is
right?
shooting film. As a matter of fact, these cameras that we like, these travel cameras like the Canonet, they're $275 to $325 on eBay, and every one of them sells, and they still need to be cleaned and refurbished and whatnot. And people, I mean, it's the hot, like you said, it's very popular to shoot film. It's not even easy to get film that much. It sells out quickly. You can get it everywhere, but it sells out. I mean, but we also do a lot of studio photography, and we shoot film in the studio. It's great because there's something great about it. But like I said, every tool for every job. Use all the paintbrushes you can find. You don't have to just use your phone. You can use your phone. Maybe you're using a mirrorless camera on one shot. Maybe you're using a GoPro.
And speaking of all those things, you have you in your at your store, right? Basically.
Well, we don't have a store, but we have a design studio. Yeah.
Right. And you make things for all those different cameras.
We not the GoPros, but yeah, we make for Red cameras and all the professional higher end cameras. We make shoulder systems for mirrorless cameras and cages and viewfinders, and we make. But our main thing is we make electronic viewfinders. We used to have two. Now we've sort of phased out one. But that is what we're really known for, is our Chameleon electronic viewfinder, which is a viewfinder that you can attach to any camera, and it's not optical. It's a digital viewfinder, so it's like a giant TV. Actually, it's like a tiny TV, I should say. And you put your eye in it when it's on your shoulder, and you can, but it's extremely high resolution.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's for critical focusing, and it has all kinds of, focus assist tools and LUTs and all this kind of stuff. It's used in It's what you would use with a professional camera to see the image while you're hand holding. And we're working on a new one right now that'll, I'm not going to really talk about it, but it will be the highest resolution electronic viewfinder ever made.
In the world, in
Yes.
the universe.
Yes. I mean, our viewfinder now is considered the de facto standard best in the world, I would say, our Chameleon. There's not that many viewfinders out there. There's like maybe three people that make them. That's it. Maybe two. It's a lot of R&D and a couple of years to actually make it come to fruition. To get this type of resolution, because the actual screen is about the size of your thumbnail.
Wow.
And it's an OLED with 5.5 million like lit bulbs in that little teeny screen.
Wow.
So that screen itself costs like $300. Just the screen. Then you got all the electronics behind it. So that's really our premier product, I would say, is our electronic viewfinders. We had this whole line called the Graticals, but we retired those, and we're now on our Chameleon, and we have our V3 Chameleon that's going to be coming out, and it'll be something really spectacular.
You work out of love and passion.
Yeah, I mean, even designing products, to me, I look at it the same way I look at shooting. It's the process is the same. You come up with a design, you 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 pick up your tools, you figure out how you want the whole thing to work, and then you go into production. It's kind of the same. It's like whether you're designing something, building a building, making a movie, creating a garment, painting a painting. It's the same.
You guys work in the industry, and then you're designing these things for the industry.
Yeah, we've okay. So Jens is my cinematographer for about 38 years. We have I have only shot one or two things. I've shot several thousand projects in my life, like 2,000, and uh, he has worked on every one but two. So we're very close. We're friends. We are business partners, and he is my cinematographer no matter what I shoot. Um, and our brains are in sync on a lot of these, especially when we're looking at something that we're going to shoot. Um, but
And
it's
you're a director, so to have someone that close be your cinematographer,
there
you
aren't
know,
words I can tell you to
mm,
describe that. It's a very comforting thing when you know that somebody is going to understand your vision of what you want to do. And I mean, I can't imagine working with a different cinematographer and then having them to like have to learn how your whole brain works.
right. Well, that's
It's
why film crews normally they become family.
Oh yeah, they move from
Yeah.
we know this friend of mine. They shot The Help, and then they went on to shoot another movie, and then the same crew went to all these different movies, and Spielberg works with Janusz, and he's probably done 10, 15 movies with him, and that's his cinematographer.
And making movies is a great excuse for getting together and hanging out with your best friends, right?
If they are your best friends, I mean, I have been on some sets where it's gotten kind of ugly, but
Oh
uh,
no.
yeah, stuff happens. But
Yeah, I know.
yeah, I mean, it's just a really great thing to be able to create anything.
Yeah.
It's a thing, a movie, like I said, anything. I don't care what you're creating. Just sit back, try to look at it from a different perspective, like your dad did, and that's your vision that you want to put out there, and you want people to look at it, and you hope that they see that, wow, he had a very interesting, that was kind of clever that he went down low like that. And it allowed me to see this church in a new, different way.
Yeah.
That
Well, that's
special.
that's imagine. I mean, well, you learned from your dad as well, and not many people get to do that. But I did it. Your dad taught you. My dad was very hands off towards me, so I was forced to learn through observing him and watching movies and seeing the photographs. He was also a painter, like your daughter. So all those things kind of come together. And for me, I was very enthused about what he did. So I studied it and I paid a lot of attention to what he was doing and thinking that I was becoming aware of, his motive and his intention with every little thing that he was doing behind a camera.
That's great. I mean, my dad taught me this thing that I wish I could teach a lot of young people today, because the problem with the phone is that you don't know any of the basis of imagery because it just does everything. And I think that you lose a lot when you don't understand the things that make up imagery are time, your shutter speed, your aperture, which creates your depth of field, and the sensitivity of the film, of the format you're working on, whether it be film, which had a emulsion sensitivity, the ISO, or the effective ISO in the phone. So I run into this a lot now when kids are shooting on film. They're like, okay, wait a minute, what is this aperture and how do I do it? I'm like, you have to understand that there is this, your shutter speed and your depth and your aperture relate to your depth of field, and they relate to how much light you have. And when people say, oh, it's kind of noisy, okay, that's because your ISO has got to be higher.
Yeah.
Which means that you're going to have shallower depth of field. So this idea of where people want to, now these phones are kind of interesting. They have this sort of fake depth of field now.
Right.
But you can act now. Your buddy there, Conrad, created real depth of field. And I think some of that he did in camera because he got up very close to somebody and used the macro mode.
Yes. He did not. He did not. He did I mean, he used a tripod as well for a lot of the big opening scenes and the the wide shots. But he also got very close to each subject where he was filming it. There was no, I don't even think he was able to really to zoom in with the iPhone 4.
No, but by using the macro mode, he could create a very shallow depth of field, which is what he wanted. So a lot of people, like, when the 5D came out, it made this razor thin depth of field. Everybody was like all gaga because every video camera before that, everything was in focus. Kind of like the phone,
making it very flat.
Right. So they were like going nuts with it. It was so shallow. It was like they went overboard. And it was, people were, their nose and their eye were not even in the same. It was too much. But that's what amazed me when I saw his phone thing. It was like, okay, he did a clever thing. He used that macro to trick the camera into creating depth of field. And those types of things are brilliant. That's when somebody comes up with a new way to use the device, but he understands the relationship between optics, and the speed of the camera, the aperture, and the ISO. Those are the four things that people really need to learn when using these phones. And when you go into these new apps like these photo apps, which I'm just starting to play with.
Yeah.
Not the movie ones, like this Blackmagic one. That's kind of cool. I was noodling around with that because I still do more. Well, I shouldn't say that. I do equal amount of photography and film, but there are some really nice photography apps, and then the Filmic app and the Blackmagic app they let you get at these various things like shutter speed and aperture and ISO
Try
and
also Procam.
Procam.
Yeah, try
Yeah,
that one out too.
that's an older one, right?
Yeah, but they update all the time.
Yeah, okay, I know that one. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I will because, but those really open up a lot of possibilities of making this thing like a actual camera.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
We're seeing things that we know that are like, well, that sounds weird.
I know it's like I'm
Right.
dancing around the way of not. It's like I want a new name for this thing. I don't want to call it a phone. I don't want to call it.
Well, that's why, look, the film festival is called mobile filmmaking because in the future, if something other than a smartphone is what everybody has, see, that's the whole mission of the film festival is to use the one device that everybody has access to. So that way, everyone has access to making movies and telling stories. And that's kind of the motto of the film festival. I didn't want to name it smartphone or cell phone. I had people call it a cell phone film festival because I started it back before the iPhone and all that stuff. And I was like, I'm just keeping it mobile, even though technically a DSLR or any other device
they're all
is
mobile.
also mobile. But I focus on the one device that everyone in the world has access to. And this is probably funny to you, but more people have access to a phone than a toothbrush around the world. That's a fact. Isn't that crazy?
Well, it kind of blows my mind at how many images are being recorded every minute.
Isn't that awesome?
I've thought about this so often. It's like now in the film, you're looking at 60 or probably 30 frames a second. Those are all individual images. And then in photography, there's got to be trillions of images shot every day.
Mm-hmm.
And that would have been impossible on film. Just where trillions of pieces of film would fill the whole earth.
And having to develop them all.
That too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't, every time I say phone, it makes people feel like it, and the fact that everyone has one, that it's not a professional device, but it is a professional device. You just have.
Yeah, it is. And but it's all something. It's like everybody says it. Use Kleenex for tissue. It's just a matter of people just getting used to it, and they will.
Yeah, it's an incredible device. It's an incredible device. It's still like most of my career in the 90s. I would have killed to have a phone over, and I had $30,000-$40,000 cameras.
My parents literally told me, stop taking so many photos because we can't develop them all.
Yeah, that's a whole nother topic for
right?
a whole. This came up. I was doing a shoot on Sunday, and somebody said, "It's digital. Just take hundreds of them." I said, "Just keep rolling." I said, "But you're not realizing this. When you keep rolling, now you've just made my editorial time go up massively going through all of this."
Yeah.
I'm not that way. I like to kind of plan out my shot, do two of them, maybe, if I get a good one right out of the gate, I'm just going to do one other one. I'm not going to do and then I'm done. I'm not shooting 40 of these things. Get the one, and it's the first one's best anyways. It's always that way.
I've worked on some places where they're like, yeah, can we do it again? Can we do it again? Can we do it again? Especially when you have a human subject. It's like you're wearing them out.
Yeah, this concept is so like they let's do a safety, but then the safety's not good. So then they want to do another one and then another one.
Yeah.
It's like it was just supposed to be a safety anyways.
Right.
I don't know. The first take is typically if you go with my zero direction rule, which is I kind of, for the first part of my career, I was a little dictator, and then I became a director taught me how to do this zero direction technique where you just say nothing. And people tend to do it. It's amazing. I've learned that they do this thing that I never envisioned. And if I made them do it the way I wanted to, I lost out on on what they brought to the table.
Yeah.
I can always make them do what I want them to do. So it's better to just say nothing. And then they come up with this incredible thing that you never thought of. And then you're done. And I'm like, okay, that's perfect. Let's just go on. Let's, do your safety. But if the safety sucks, we're not doing another safety. That's it.
Yeah.
Because you can safety
I'm
yourself.
serious. You and I, we're going to have a great time when you come over to San Diego.
Okay.
Because we're going to keep talking about this stuff. And you're going to come back on the show. There's no way around that.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I think I really enjoyed this conversation, and I know our listeners are going to enjoy all these stories that you've shared and all your insights and information. Is there anything else that we should mention, that you should mention, that you'd like to mention?
No, I mean, I didn't really know what I'm not a person that's going to be pushing my equipment on people.
Right.
They can go to our website. I still want them to buy the right tool for the right job, whether it is something that I make or it's something that somebody else makes. I'm more interested in seeing, I was going to say young people, but people of all ages do incredible work. And if I can help in that in any way, I'm happy to do it. But I'm more about the work than I am about the equipment. But we make equipment that I like for me, and you can try it out and see if it's right for you.
Well, you're going to love this. The youngest person that's made a movie for a film festival was 11 years old, and the oldest person was 87.
Well, there you go.
So.
And I used to have, when I did when I was much more active in the community, I used to have I had a 13-year-old contact me who was doing all these evangelical films, and his parents knew, he was asking how I felt about these different shots and things he was doing. And I thought he was doing fabulous work. And I said, stick with that type of content. It's very emotional. You're telling great stories. I think it's great, and I had several 15-year-olds that we took to NAB with us, who were doing exceptional work. One from Germany, Phil Ernst. He does all kinds of crazy stuff now, and I don't know. I just love when young people come up with great work. It's incredible.
We can learn a lot from them too.
You can.
Yep. Yes.
They can also learn from us.
Yep. It works. It's the give and take. It's the sharing part.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Steve.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Say goodbye to our listeners.
Goodbye.